Hi everyone, Shannon with Apogee the Moon, and buddy, this week we have the second pass of Saturn and Uranus in square, and so this time Saturn, we're gonna have one more pass of this year. This is the second pass, and Saturn is retrograde. So there's going to be a lot, it's not going to be a lot different, but it will be different. It will be, boundaries will be an issue. Boundaries either being crossed or having too few boundaries, right? And having to reaffirm boundaries in an area of our life in square with Uranus, because Uranus it's direct. So it's an outside influence coming in to either agitate, to shake things up, to liberate you, to free you from something. And so this could be someone coming in from the outside affecting you, and you're having to say, whoa, here's my boundaries. Or this could be you yourself crossing over someone else's boundaries that's different and, whatnot. So we'll talk about it when we get there for all 12 signs. I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I have my arcana of astrology cards. And so instead of doing a PowerPoint like I normally do, I'm going to keep my my face up on the screen and shuffle these little guys and do it that way this time. So shaking things up a little bit. Maybe I'm Uranus influence, just saying. So to talk about, the other energy of the week, on the 13th, we will have Venus in sextile with Uranus, and this is a waxing phase for Venus in her phase away from being renewed in her sign of Taurus. And, after the conjunction of Venus with Uranus and that kind of shakeup, now it's the waxing phase. Like, it's a sextile, it's working with that energy, working with the wild card energy. And then, it's working with other people in unique and different ways to nurture and take care of and to help understand those that are going through a massively disruptive time. And so on the same day, on June 13th, though, we do have the sun squaring Neptune. And so on the high end of that, this can show us how we're interconnected, without the ego in charge, and show us where we all hurt the same, where we all bleed the same, where, we all laugh, we all cry the same. On the lower end, this can be narcissistic manipulation, or, people scapegoating or being narcissistic through a false sense of ego. They think that because they know better, they're better than, kind of thing. So some people will feel completely invisible, while others will shine even brighter, so even if they're not true, right, or just in their message or in what it is that they're representing. There could be like Griselda Pacheco, who is on the Lilith Society, that is one of the co-founders of the Lilith Society. She's always saying, the false light and this and that. And there's a lot of really interesting correlation and correspondence. So it's definitely some scapegoatish energy, and ego gets in the way. So there can be some manipulation based on ego there. And then on the 14th, we do have, like I said, that Saturn Uranus square happening. And unlike the first pass, both planets were direct. This time Saturn is in retrograde. And this is the second of the third pass. So in direct motion, it was when they both were direct in the first pass, it was a hard angle of frustration, limitation, of wild twists, crazy situations. And now with Saturn retrograde, you know, boundaries are an issue. Like I said a few minutes ago, either underutilized or a reaffirmation that needs to happen. The Saturn Uranus square is getting very interesting, you know, in personal lives and in, you know, the collective as a whole. And so with this, you know, we can see people in general rising up and overthrowing harsh limitations and restrictions, you know, but we also have to remember everything is in relation to everything else. And so, oops, turn that off. This can see people taking their own power back and putting up boundaries themselves to stop overreach of something or someone, you know. But with Uranus direct, this is kind of like the wild and uncontrollable events happening from the outside that are overstepping our boundaries and, you know, creating yeah, I'm having a really hard time with this Mercury retrograde. That you know, with Saturn retrograde, this can see people being their own authority and creating and making changes on their own volition, that are looked upon by others as radical, wild, and different and weird. You know, in the moment with the correlation of the eclipse that just happened this past week, and this happening now, as well as on the 17th, I believe it is. Yes, on the 17th, we do have the first quarter square at 27 degrees of Gemini and Virgo of this eclipse. So there is action that is starting to be taken, starting to unfold, starting to manifest in the tangible reality, because the moon is in Virgo and Virgo is an earth sign, even if it is more air in nature because it's ruled by Mercury. It is still an earth-based sign and is still that practical initiation of sorts in terms of what it is that we're doing with this eclipse that came in and is now starting to manifest in our lives. Okay, so now I'm gonna get on my screen so I can see my actual self here. And so what this means for all 12 signs, we're going to talk about the Saturn Uranus square that's going on, and the first quarter square of this eclipse. How about that? So we'll talk about both of those. I won't bother talking about the Sun square Neptune because that happens every year, but an eclipse in Gemini only happens, you know, once. A solar eclipse in Gemini only happens once a year for about 18 months at a time. So yeah, I know I just said that completely backwards. So first sign out of the gate, of course. See if you can see this. Aries. All right, Aries. So this Saturn Uranus square is happening in your second and in your 11th house. And so what this is doing is this is kind of a revisit to what happened, you know, back in February when they first came exact. And this is coming at it in a different way because now maybe there's something going on with either your finances or maybe your friends' finances and they need some help, so they're overstepping on their boundaries. Or maybe you need to reaffirm your financial boundaries and understand where your limitations are, where you need to shore up that pocketbook or that bank account, or make sure that you're not overspending for the fun times that you want to have with that 11th house, and make sure that your money and material and possessions are taken care of before you decide that you're gonna, you know, maybe buy a $30,000 boat when you shouldn't. So there is that. With this first quarter square happening in Virgo, from, you know, the eclipse in Gemini in your third house. Now the sun is still in your third house, but the moon has now moved into your sixth house. So this is, you know, this is taking action on, starting to take action on events that happened around that eclipse time, and maybe things are moving. Maybe there is acts of service, there's health even, for some Aries rising people, that maybe even like mental health, or health of the mind. You know, there could be, when it relates to the body, there could maybe be, with the moon, maybe you're having some digestive issues because you have something going on with your body, namely your shoulders, your hands, maybe like your neurological things in your body too. And so there could be things like that going on. There could definitely be some action that needs to be taken with the with your health, especially because Mercury was involved in this eclipse. So this is definitely working with the energy and understanding what actions, what next steps, being very practical, maybe even getting an alternative opinion, an alternative opinion. I'll leave it at that. So you can read between the lines on that one. So that is for Aries and for Aries rising. Really? Did I not shuffle? Okay, I'm sorry. I need to shuffle these again. Okay, so now we'll go to Kit, because it was Taurus. So I'm not going in line with the zodiac. I want to shuffle these so I can just pick something and go. All right, so this is for Cancer. So for Cancer and for Cancer rising, and I don't know, you can't see it because I have a light, but otherwise you wouldn't see me. But this is Cancer. So for Cancer and for Cancer rising, this Saturn Uranus square is happening in your 11th and in your 8th house. So back in February, there was something that was happening, something that was going on that was causing friction, delay, limitation. There was something that was wild and crazy that was going on with your friends groups, and maybe you felt really triggered by it. Maybe you felt triggered by someone in your friends group, and now it comes back around in another way. But maybe your boundaries are down. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have. Maybe you have to revisit some old traumas, old wounds, old insecurities, old baggage, old, issues. This could even be revisiting joint finances over something, or inheritances and taxes, insurances, and things like that, money coming in from other people. And so there's a revision that's going on here in that 8th house. And so it could be any of those things that I just named. But in the 11th house, this is your friends, this is your aspirations, this is your social groups, your social networks, the people that you surround yourself with by choice. This is, your hopes, your wishes, your dreams. This is your future planning. So with the square happening the second time around, maybe there's something that needs to be revisited. With Saturn, this could be maybe revisiting with an authority figure for finances. Maybe for some of you, wherever you live, if you're Cancer rising, maybe it's the government is deciding that they're going to cut out your extra stimulus, right? It could be something as simple as that. And for a lot of people, it probably is. And I hate to say that, but yeah, for a lot of people, it probably is. Now but this is being revisited from February. So revisited, think about what happened back in February. I'm sure as I post this, as I'm recording this, you already are aware of what this is and what this entails. For me, I know what that is. So we can revisit it, but now we really need to hone in and understand where we need to shore up those boundaries, and whether or not it's friends that are overstepping and they don't realize that they're stepping on an old trauma, whether or not it's being Uranus is shaking up your friends group, but it's also your future plans. Maybe your future plans are getting shooken up, and that's really kind of making you revisit some old traumas and old wounds. And so maybe you need to really take a step back and evaluate what you need to release that is traumatic from the past that will help you move forward in once Saturn goes direct. Because the third pass, Uranus is going to be retrograde and Saturn will be direct. So there's going to be a revision here throughout the year for that. And for the first quarter square, Gemini, this is your 12th house, and Virgo, this is your 3rd house. So for Cancer rising particularly, there is some type of action, some type of maybe communication, some type of thought process, some type of very practical application in communication that you need to take in order to fully comprehend what's going on with that, what happened with this eclipse, and what action needs to be taken from what it is that needs to be cleared up. I mean, obviously Mercury is retrograde, but there's still, it's kind of like an automatic response. When planets are retrograde, yes, it's revisiting, yes, it's redoing, but I mean, this was in square with Neptune, so this could definitely be, you know, intuiting the communication, or maybe talking to someone, or maybe even something to do with your siblings too. Maybe talking to your siblings. It could be, you know, but this is your chart ruler too in your 3rd house. So this is definitely you communicating what it is that you need to do. And there's a crazy child standing over me. So I feel like I'm in Children of the Corn, just by the way. So that's for Cancer and for Cancer rising. So for Aquarius and Aquarius rising, coming up next here at you, if you can, I don't know if I can get this focus here. Right, so that's Aquarius and Aquarius rising. So for Aquarius and Aquarius rising, this Saturn Uranus square is happening in your sign. So you've gone through, I mean, poor Aquarius. Whew, you guys have gone through the biggest transformation of all the signs with all that whole stellium that happened in your on your ascendant if you're a rising Aquarius. So with Saturn going retrograde here, this is you reevaluating all that, right? Like this is you reevaluating who you've become, maybe who you think you've become, because there's something that's going on with Uranus down in your 4th house that's shaking things up, that's making things very volatile, that's making things, you know, it's shaking you out of, it's also your other chart ruler. So this is shaking you out of complacency in terms of what's going on the home front, what's going on with your family, what's going on with your roots, what's going, like those deep roots, those ancestors. And so this could be, you know, you revising, and because of the shakeup that happened at home, because of the shocking events, right, that happened back in February or whatnot, even when this came to the first pass, this could be you revising what it is truly that you're doing, that you yourself are doing, and the give and the take that needs to happen, and that kind of frustrating energy of wanting things to change in that 4th house with your property, with your home, with your family, and you having to revisit maybe why you want that to happen the way you want it to happen. Now, the other thing is the first quarter square from the eclipse that happened in your 5th house. So this is happening in your 5th and in your 8th house. And so there's definitely, there could be some health issues, especially with top traumas, wounds. Like, the reason I say health issues is because the moon does rule your 6th house. And so with the moon in the 8th house, this could be from that eclipse that happened in your 5th house. This could be, yeah, this could be action that needs to be taken for whatever it was that came up during that eclipse. And so it's the beginning actions that need to be taken. And so it's not going to be clear, it's not going to be finalized, you know, because of how this eclipse came about and the aspects that it was making. But there's definitely some action that needs to be taken in terms of children and hobbies and romance, like romantic interests, hobbies, things that you love to do because you love to do them. Children, right? That's a big thing with the 5th house too. And self-expression, how you're expressing yourself. So maybe there's some action that needs to be taken, excuse me, on a new way that you're expressing yourself, and you decide that that's what you want to do. You want to take action on that. So there is that. So now for Gemini and Gemini rising, this Saturn Uranus square is happening for you. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, Gemini in the background. We got the kids in there. They know they're not supposed to be doing certain things. So Gemini, Aquarius is your 9th house, and Taurus is your 12th house. Yes, so your 9th and your 12th. So there's something that needs to be revisited in terms of that 9th house, in terms of maybe the education that you're getting, or the higher world view, or maybe the travel opportunities that you thought were finalized and done. Maybe they're not done now. Maybe with Saturn retrograde coming back into a square with Uranus in your 12th, you know, there's something that's going on that is kind of behind the scenes that you're like, what the heck just happened? And why can I not travel? So there could be something that comes up for you as to, you know, why you're not traveling, or maybe an educational pursuit that was waylaid. It's doing things. Saturn is asking you to shore up your boundaries in that 9th house, to really get a grasp on what it is that you truly believe to be good, right, and just in the world. And so, I mean, this is happening in trine with your ascendant, right? Regardless of whether or not it's a degree based or it's just a sign based, it's still a trine. And so with the square happening, yeah, it can be frustrating. Yeah, it can be feeling like this ominousness and this weird kind of electric kind of energy going on behind the scenes. And maybe you're, you know, you're having a hard time sleeping or something like that, especially with Uranus in the 12th. That's, ooh, can't wait for that one. But for you in particular, this is less, I mean, depending on how the rest of your chart is set up, but this is less disruptive, I would say, than most of the other signs, because Saturn is in trine with your ascendant, in sextile with your descendant. And so you have an avenue to work with partners and partnerships in order to alleviate some of these things going on in that 9th house. But maybe there's definitely a revision that needs to happen in terms of what it is that you believe to be true, right, and just in the world, and what travel plans you have, or what educational pursuits, either teaching or learning, or editing, publishing, things like that, marketing even, that need to be done. And so there's a lot of disruption that's happening behind the scenes for that. That makes sense. There we go. And then for the square, the first quarter square, I mean, this is happening in your sign, and I mean, the eclipse happened in your sign. And so this first quarter square at 27 degrees is happening in your 4th house of home, family, roots, property. So that maybe there's something that you need to do. There's some action that you need to take in terms of your roots and where you come from and your lineage and your ancestors, to be able to truly understand what went on at that eclipse for you this past week. So there is that as well. For Capricorn and for Capricorn rising, hopefully you guys can see this and it's not backwards. For Capricorn and Capricorn rising, the Uranus Saturn square is going on in your second and in your fifth house. So Saturn in your second house is really revising, re-editing, redoing your financial security, your sense of worth, your sense of value. And it's really trying to get you to understand where it is that you need to shore up those boundaries, how you need to shore up those boundaries, and why you need to shore up those boundaries. Because there's, I mean, there's wild card energy coming from that fifth house. Maybe you are in a, boyfriend, girlfriend type situation, or you have children, or there's a creative hobby or creative endeavor that you really want to, you're gung ho about and you really want to do, and it's wild, it's out of the box, and it feels good and it's great because it's in trine with your ascendant. But Saturn is saying, but there's not enough money. So what are you going to do? Right. So there is that as well for you. And just know, Saturn in retrograde, this square coming exact, whatever was happening for you back in February of this of 2021, this is coming around again, but in a different way. So with Saturn retrograde, I say Saturn's offline. Saturn's not, it's not technically offline. It's just, it's internalized, and it's really looking at the where you need to shore up those boundaries, where you need to understand at a much deeper level what boundaries you need to have with your money, material, and possessions, as well as your sense of value. What you value is also under revision here too. Now with the first quarter square that's happening, this is happening in, let's see, Capricorn, this is happening in your sixth and in your ninth house. So there's some sixth house, that's a rough one. So there's a few ways this one can play out, just like with all the signs. There's always different levels of manifestation of what the sign actually represents, what the planets represent, which aspects are going to be highlighted and which are not. They're all there all the time, but different levels as you get deeper down the spiral. So for Capricorn rising people in particular, this solar eclipse happened in your sixth house. This is your health. This is your body's health. This is your mental health. This is what you do every single day to sustain your health and to live, right? This is where you go to work. This is where you slave away to make that pittance of money that you need to survive. This is your job, right? And so there's a few other, but there, with the eclipse that happened here, I mean, there could be weird health problems that pop up. There could be a brand new job maybe that came in, and now you maybe there's something going on where you have to travel. You have to either move or you have to do something. Maybe there's some education that needs to happen, but this first quarter square is actually more action, right? It's more, the sun and the moon are in square from where they came together. And so it's asking you to do something about it. It's asking you to do. Squares are always do. It's tension, it's friction, it's arguments, disputes, it's passion, it's drive, it's ambition, it's all of those. And with the sun and the moon, this is the masculine and the feminine. So it's the sun wants to do action and the moon wants to be receptive. So there is that, and this could be a very heady square. And when I say heady, it's because both the sun and the moon are in Mercury signs, and Mercury is very retrograde right now. So yes, under normal circumstances, Mercury would, you'd be able to logic your way out of it. Currently with Mercury retrograde and in square with Neptune, you are not going to be able to logic your way through this situation. You're going to need to intuit, because it's not going to be clear. The way is not going to be clear, and what you need to do is not going to be clear. So there is that. Now for Libra and Libra risings. So this Saturn Uranus square is happening in your 5th house and in your 8th house. So this is, this is the second turn of it. And so in the 5th house, with Saturn being retrograde in your 5th house, this is revising, redoing, re-editing, especially, where your boundaries are in terms of your children, where your boundaries are with your lovers and your romantic partners. This is really honing in on and understanding what needs to be liberated in terms of traumas, wounds, other people's money, past traumas, past wounds, other people's money. This can also be a really wild and crazy ride in terms of the square that's going on. I know one Libra rising that's comes to mind in particular, but this can show up any number of ways. So some of you, it will be other people's money. It will be maybe the finances. If you do have a boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe there's something going on with their finances and or your hobbies and their finances. Maybe they feel like they need to foot the bill, and it's very disruptive to your equilibrium in terms of their money. Or maybe there's something that comes up that needs to be reevaluated with your children, and so there needs to be joint finances, or there needs to be outside. This could be if it's for your children, this could see or your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatnot. This could see what's the word I'm looking for? Child psychology, right? Like having to employ a child psychologist for some of you, just for if it's a child, right? So now in general, though, this could also be finances that have to do with hobby, finances that have to do with a passion of yours, or, a way that you self-express. Could be maybe there's some money that needs to be taken for a passion project that you want to turn into a business even. So there's getting money from those institutions. The 7th house would be signing the contract. The 8th house would be actually getting the money for from the institution for the passion project. So there is that. For Scorpio and Scorpio rising. So for you, Scorpio, this second pass of Saturn Uranus square with Saturn retrograde here, this burdens, limitations, restrictions in terms of what's going on the home front. So it's more internalized, it's more revising and having to redo and re-edit and reapply or apply for the first time. I know a Scorpio rising friend that recently just had something happen, and it's like, wow, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense with what's going on in your chart. So it's funny. It's not funny, but it's the irony that the planets are that literal sometimes. With Uranus in your 7th house, this is shaking up your contracts, your agreements, your negotiations. And so thinking back to what was going on in February, it's coming back around for a second time, but it's coming back around in a different way, because maybe there's, family that came to visit, and now you're like, okay, in February, and it's time for you guys to go. Right? Like maybe it's that. Maybe there's some family members that have overstayed their welcome and you really want them out. For some of you. And so for others of you, this could be a building project at home, buying a home, maybe applying for a loan for a home and the paperwork's not quite right. And so you have the authority coming in and saying, no, hey, this isn't right. You need to apply for this. You need to do this. You need to fill out this paperwork, and you need to do this and pay this money, because Uranus in the 7th house. Isn't that fun? So there could be something like that. and so it's coming back around in a little bit of a different way, and having to reaffirm boundaries on the home front in some way, shape, or form, or with family members or with your parents or something of that nature. For the square happening in Gemini and Virgo, this is your 8th and your 11th house. So with the eclipse coming in, there was something brand new, because it's a North Node eclipse that ended up a North Node eclipse that's coming in. And so what this is doing is this is taking action with your friends. Maybe this is taking action with your social networks, with the people that you associate with by choice. And so you're feeling really emotionally excited about something that is esoteric in nature, or maybe there's some type of brand new loan that came through and you're able to, do the thing with the humanitarian project that you want to do, because that is right. The 11th house is also humanitarian pursuits. It can be getting ready to create charities, if that makes sense. And so pursuing those, humanitarian actions that need to take place. So there is that as well. There could be maybe for some of you, there's like maybe you are seeing an astrologer for the first time. Maybe you are learning magic for the first time. Maybe you are associating and connecting the dots in terms of because Mercury was part of that eclipse and it rules both your 8th and your 11th house. So there could definitely be some associations with bringing in money through your friends groups, as with a joint business venture. It could be that as well. So that is for Scorpio and for Scorpio rising. For Virgo, hey, what do you know? For Virgo and for Virgo rising, so the Saturn Uranus square is happening in your 9th house and in your 6th house. So Saturn in your 9th house is revising, re-editing, and wait, nope. Uranus is in your 9th house. I'm sorry, Virgo. So with Uranus in your 9th house, like it's really shaking up what's going on with your worldview. It's shaking up on what you know to be true, right, and just in the world, and your higher belief system and your dogma. It's also shaking up what it is that you're doing for education. Maybe you're learning astrology, right? Because Uranus in the 9th house, that could definitely be learning astrology. Or it could be learning weird, different, brand new beauty techniques as well. It could be something like that. But with the square, in your 6th house with Saturn, I mean, this could see you being limited in what it is that you're doing for work. So you decide that you're going back to school, and now there's something going on where maybe you're being pulled back into work. And so you have to kind of halt whatever it is that you're doing with that 9th house. So think back to February of last year and what was going on then. It's going to come around in a different way. It's going to come around in maybe feeling limited, feeling delayed, feeling, like you're subdued, depending, or maybe you're too free. And so you need to shore up your boundaries in what it is that you're doing in that 6th house as well. Now, for the first quarter square, this is happening in your 10th and in your sign. So the eclipse that happened this past week is, it's in your 10th house and it's with your chart ruler and it's with your 10th house ruler, Mercury. So this is taking action. This is you yourself taking action on, whatever it is that's going on, right? Taurus. Yeah, I'm going crazy, man. Like my brain's shot. So this is you taking action. This is you taking the initiative to take those next steps in order of what it is that you want to do up there in that 10th house. And so this is asking you to do it. And maybe you need to utilize a friend because, Cancer is your 11th house. Or maybe you need to utilize, maybe this is you taking action on it because this is truly what your hopes, wishes, and dreams are. And this is where you truly want to go. So it could be something like that for you. For Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising. So this Uranus Saturn square is happening in your third and in your sixth house. So think back to February of what was going on, and this is a revisit of that energy. And so revisiting the energy from February, what was going on then? You're going to have to come around, you're going to have to revisit it in a different way because Saturn is retrograde. So this could mean that there's a revision that needs to happen in terms of what's going on with your siblings, or maybe because of health issues that have popped up, you have to revise, you know, what it is that you're going to be, where it is that you're going to be going within your community, or what it is that you're going to be doing. Maybe, you know, maybe you can't go anywhere because you get stuck in another lockdown, right? Or maybe you can't go anywhere because something happens to your vehicle, or maybe you can't go somewhere you know, because, and I do apologize if you can hear them yelling at each other in the background. They're waiting rather not patiently anymore for mommy to get out doing her video. So there is that. But for you specifically, there could be definitely be some major disruptions going on in that sixth house of what it is that you're doing every day. I mean, it's been going on, but with Saturn now, Saturn is kind of limiting what you're saying and how you're saying it and why you're saying it. And so it's asking you to get more structured and more authoritative with what it is that you're saying, and be that authority with what it is that you're saying, because you need to be, right? For the Gemini and Virgo square that's happening with the sun and the moon, we did have that eclipse in your seventh house. So now with the moon coming into that first quarter square in Gemini in your 10th house, this is taking action, maybe in partnership, for taking action in partnership for what it is that's going on, for what it is that you're known for the practical, logical things that need to happen in order for these new contracts, these new agreements, these new negotiations, these new clients to come in. So maybe there's something happening, you know, around this day, right? Because this is action being taken from a partner for you with what's going on in that 10th house for you. So there could be something like that going on for some Sagittarius rising people. For other Sagittarius rising, this could be your spouse, this could be your significant other, this could be a business partner that you are working with in order to get the message out, in order to talk about what's going on. And maybe because it's the moon, it's on something esoteric, right? Because the moon rules your 8th house of you know, magic and things like that. So it could be something like that for some of you. So next one is a Pisces. So for Pisces and for Pisces rising, this eclipse, or no, this, I'm sorry, this Saturn Uranus square is happening in your 12th and in your 3rd house. So, wow, had to think about that one for a minute. Whew, take a minute, huh? So Saturn is in your 12th house. So, I mean, I hate Saturn in the 12th house. I hated that transit. Because you're forced to be in solitude, right? So maybe what's happening is there's something from February that's coming back around for you to reevaluate in terms of what it is that you're communicating or how you're communicating. And you're getting this like ominous sense of, you know, you maybe you want to communicate something and you really feel like you really need to, and it's something that you need to say, you know, but you have Saturn there in the 12th kind of limiting things. This could also be Saturn in the 12th limiting your connection, right? Because the 12th house is our connection to source. It's our connection to other worlds. It's our connection to what goes on behind the veil or behind the scenes. But with Saturn retrograde, I mean, this could either, it could go both ways, right? Depending. So with Saturn retrograde, maybe there's so many messages coming in that you're like, it's spotty and you're like communicating and it's like word vomit when it comes. And it's on again, off again with that Uranus energy with Saturn retrograde. Or you feel like ever since Saturn entered Aquarius, that it has limited it so completely. And so now with it retrograde, it's even putting more boundaries there, and you don't feel connected to anyone, and you don't feel like you're seen, and you don't feel like anyone notices what it is that you're doing or what it is that you're trying to be doing. That didn't sound right, but you know what I mean. So it could be something like that. And then for the first quarter square after this eclipse, I can't think of what I'm thinking of. This eclipse happened in your fourth house. So there's something brand spanking new that's coming in terms of your home, your property, your roots, your house, where it is that you live, where it is that you hang your head every day. And so there's action that needs to be taken in partnership. Maybe it's signing on the dotted line for a house. Maybe it's, you know, when this eclipse happened, maybe it's like, oh my gosh, there's a house that is right in this community that is for sale that I want. And now you're applying for the loan. There's action that needs to be taken. There's paperwork and documents that need to be signed, signing on the dotted line, because that's what the seventh house truly is. And so this is applying for the loan. This is getting the paperwork done. This is doing all that. Or this could be maybe someone is coming to live with you. And so this is making the agreements, making the negotiations. Maybe you need a tenant to come and live in your house. It could be something like that as well. But there's definitely action that needs to be taken that, you know, maybe it's a home business, right? Like, because the other axis is the 10th house. So maybe it's taking action on a home business for you as well. So that is for Pisces rising. For Taurus and Taurus rising. So this Saturn Uranus square is still happening in your 10th and in your sign. Uranus has been transiting your sign now for a while. I'm sure you're sick and tired of Uranus being there, but it's shaking you up. It's shaking you out of complacency. It could also be some, you know, really crazy neurological issues with your body. Try to stay away from caffeinated beverages or stimulants with Uranus there for sure. But with Saturn retrograde, there's something that needs to be revised. And so with this square that happened the first time back in February, something happened. Something happened that, you know, was either you were shocking and it limited what you were doing out in the world, or there was an opportunity that came that was kind of very shocking for you, but you couldn't take action on it. Well, now with retrograde Saturn, maybe you're able to take action on it. Maybe you're able to understand what it is that you need to do, the boundaries that you need to put in place, maybe the authority figures that sorry, Taurus, it's been a long day. That's all I'm going to say. So maybe there is something that some action that needs to be taken in terms of bosses, or you being a boss, or authority figures, or people above you. And so with the Saturn retrograde, I mean, the Saturn retrograde could be, maybe you go back to work, maybe you're called back to work, or maybe you get a new career, right? Like maybe you're switching jobs, like you're switching, crap. See, I'm not liking Mercury retrograde over the top of my natal Venus. I'm really not. Sectors, you're switching job sectors, right? Like maybe it's a career change. In other words, you're going from what the heck's it called? Like maybe you're going from manufacturing to call center services or something like that, right? Like maybe there's something like that that's happening. So there's a revisit that's happening with this. And so with the first quarter square with the sun and the moon in Gemini and Virgo, that is happening in your 12th house and in your square. Oh my God, 9th house. Jeez, no. where the heck am I? What planet am I on? Taurus, where are we here? So second and fifth house. Oh my goodness. Sorry, guys. I'm really, really sorry. I had to. Your second and your fifth house. So, with the eclipse that happened in your second house, maybe there's a new opportunity that presented itself at the eclipse or around the eclipse that had to do with income, that had to do with money and material and possessions and things that you could do, money that you could make. And so maybe now with the moon in the fifth house, this is something that you're really passionate about now. And you're like, yes, I am doing this. I am moving forward. It's what I want, right? And so with it being in the fifth house, I mean, this is great, right? But just know, this is preliminary action that needs to be taken. So the fulfillment won't happen probably either, for the next 6 months to 5 years. It's something that's going to be, I mean, because the totality of it was for 5 minutes. So number of minutes equals number of years, give or take a few months. And so it's going to be something that could be long lasting. Now with the square, that happened, the fact that it was with your second house ruler and your second house ruler is retrograde, there could be some revising, redoing, re-editing that's going to happen going forward with this. But this is the preliminary action steps that need to be taken. And so that's for Taurus and for Taurus rising. Now, finally, Leo. So for Leo and for Leo rising, this Saturn Uranus square is happening in your 7th and in your 10th house. And so this retrograde Saturn is really having, I mean, you yourself could be taking a really hard look at your contracts, your agreements, your negotiations, your marriage partners, anyone that is maybe a client of yours, anyone that is in that 7th house sector. Maybe some boundaries have been crossed. Maybe you have crossed boundaries, or maybe other people have crossed your boundaries. And so there's a revision here that needs to be done. There needs to be a shoring up of, or there needs to be what am I saying? Because something's going on with what it is that you're known for, right? Up there in that 10th house, it's, Uranus has been shaking things up, but with this square coming exact again, this is asking you to really be sure that the contracts, agreements, and negotiations that you have that are known in the public are what you truly want to be known for. So something that happened back in February, this could be a revisit of that in a different way. And maybe there's something that's coming back around on the table to be shored up or to be renegotiated in terms of 7th house. And so, I've heard some other astrologers say that it's romance. It's Saturn limits and restricts and delays. So, because it is the 7th house ruler, maybe. But to me, this is more of a business. This is more of contracts, agreements, and negotiations in terms of business partnerships. For some people, for others, it very well could be romantic partners, and it could be the love of their life coming in. It could be that, but Saturn does restrict. So, let's see. And then that square, the first quarter square to, we have the eclipse in Gemini in your 11th house. Now we have the first quarter square in your second house. So there's action that can be taken in terms of your money, your materials, your possessions from that 11th house eclipse, your hopes, your wishes, your dreams, the groups and organizations that you associate with. Something out of, something brand spanking new is coming in. And it's really exciting, and it's new friends, new people, new events, even that you're gonna be associated with and you're gonna belong to. And so now it's affecting the second house, which is the money sector. Maybe there's money that's coming in. Maybe there is, and this is, don't get me wrong, right? Like, this is definitely looking at that first quarter square, it's initial action. So it could take 6 months or it could take up to 5 years for this to completely manifest into your life, or for it to, yeah, to completely manifest. So there's definitely something that is being done and action that needs to be taken on that eclipse that happened in your 11th house. And it has to do with your finances and shoring those up as well. So that is the all signs forecast, everyone. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know, you know, I'll revisit it. I will revisit what, how I do these with your feedback. So if you have watched this far, you know, let me know, and leave a comment, and let me know if you like this format or if you don't like this format. So that is that, and I will see you all next week. Ciao.